when I got COVID, I was obviously like concerned about what would happen. I tried really hard not to be scared, but in my head, I was kind of like, well, whatever happens, happens, and I'll deal with it. And while I was sick, I had some kind of glaring symptoms. Like I felt like I had expected it not to be as bad. But when it passed, I am not kidding. I almost immediately went back to baseline. It's been amazing being able to have what feels like regular people problems. You know what I mean? I can honestly tell you that's not something I was familiar with before I gained momentum in recovery. It's really refreshing, but it's a newer thing for me to be like, wow, I really look forward to seeing how things unfold in my life. Or I wonder in 5 years where I'll be career-wise, or will I be in school? Will I be in the state that I'm in? Will I be, that's not something I've ever allowed myself to do because I was horrified of the future. And I think my mindset and how I look forward is a lot different than it used to be. And it allows me to like relax and be able to handle things better. I think that, obviously the capacity is way different. I can do so many more things than I used to be able to, but I wouldn't be able to appreciate that if my mindset hadn't changed completely.
How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Ariel. She is a previous thriver, well, still a thriver, but she actually had her recovery interview just about a year ago. And we're bringing her on here again for round 2 just to see how she's doing, because a lot of people think, oh, if someone recovers from CFS, are they just in remission, right? If something happens, can they go back to square one? And so we bring people on here and thrivers on here just to show you that, you can maintain your health and you can become anti-fragile and resilient. So Ariel, welcome back for round 2. If for people who don't know you, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Ariel. I am from Michigan in the United States. I joined CFS Recovery about a year and a half ago. When I came to this program, I was walking with a cane, could barely leave the house, and was horrified of anything that I thought could remotely trigger any type of flare-up. It's been pretty amazing being part of this program and seeing where my life is today.
Yeah. And I remember you got rid of the cane just over a month into the program. And since then you've been building up and up and up. And I think you kind of went pretty independent, maybe about 6 or 8 months in, right? You didn't really need to come to all the calls because you were doing so well. But, our last chat was about a year ago. So in the last year, I kind of just want to fill the people in on how that's been for you, So just to give people an idea, leading up to you finding us, you had dealt with CFS most of your life, right? From a young age in the teens, and even this was diagnosed on paper, right? The doctors were saying you had this.
Yes, I had, the first time I got diagnosed on paper is when I was 17 and I had to have emergency surgery after having chronic strep. I had to have my tonsils removed. But I went through a really intense trauma when I was like 6.5, 7 years old. And after that, some of the stuff that was going on, I do remember them talking about me having chronic fatigue. I don't know if I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, but it was acknowledged that, the symptoms that come along with this, I had at that point in time, and they did not know how to treat it.
Yeah. But you went on this long, 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 long journey, the gauntlet of testing, trying different things. I think you had shamans. You tried to cure it with shamans. I remember. So you pretty much tried everything in the books, but you made tons of progress. You got rid of the cane, when we started working together. So since last March, what are some exciting things you've been up to? What are some things you've done, trips you've made, and, how's life been in the last year after having this new capacity?
It's been amazing being able to have what feels like regular people problems. You know what I mean? I think as far as the trips have gone, I went to Cedar Point in the U.S., which is a huge amusement park. And that was a huge accomplishment for me because there's so much walking, and obviously the roller coasters are intense. And I was able to do that without even really needing any time to recoup afterwards. I just kind of went right back to what I was doing. And there was that. And then I've traveled, it's not that far from where I live, but I've traveled to Canada and kind of explored around a little bit with people on various occasions. I've kind of gotten myself to where I have unlimited drive time. So when I drive, I don't really think about I don't think about how long it's going to be too often, unless like I just in general don't feel well or I feel like I'm actually getting sick or something. That's probably one of the biggest accomplishments for myself that I've come across. Yeah, I just feel like I've been able to get to where some of the stuff that I'm dealing with is stuff that like people just deal with, you know? So that's probably my biggest accomplishment is just getting to where um, I'm not thinking about being ill or even that I had been ill for so long when I'm dealing with things.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really interesting how it works is, when we're sick, we feel like or we imagine once we recover, it's all gonna be sunshine and rainbows, and there's gonna be, "Oh, no more problems to deal with. If I could just walk again, if I could do all these things, I'm the happiest person ever." And you are for a little bit, in the beginning, but then real life problems start happening,
Yeah.
different types of problems. It may not be health, but it's like, "All right, well, okay, I haven't worked in a few years. I gotta pay the bills," or, "I gotta do this and that," or different responsibilities. So at every stage, there's different challenges. It's just different types of
Mhm.
challenges. But I think those challenges are a lot easier than the challenges of CFS and not being able to
Yeah.
to function, right? So in the past year, have you had flare-ups? Have you had adjustment periods? What does that look like right now on the CFS side of things?
I mean, I definitely have had adjustment periods. I've had some stressors come up that like I've had some like non-CFS related medical stuff come up. I recently had COVID. I have experienced loss of actually two people I was close with, and things that ordinarily would really stress me out, like physically and mentally. And I did experience some adjustment periods. I've had probably two adjustment periods that felt a little intense. And I was just able to handle them like I've been taught to, and kind of come out on the other side a little bit stronger. But I've really been amazed at the resiliency of my body, especially with having COVID recently.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a big one.
yeah, that.
That's the thing most people fear actually. So
Mhm.
let's talk about that. When you got COVID, what was your level of capacity like right before you got it? Because you had built yourself up after all this time, but what was your capacity right before you got it?
So I will say that some things got it because of some of the non-related medical stuff I have going on. My capacity was lowered in general, just with some restrictions. But I was to the point where I could just drive wherever I wanted to. Most of the time, can do things like grocery shopping, could go on like a walk for, I don't know, like a half hour to an hour. Those types of things, go out to eat, socialize, not have to worry about sensory stuff out in public. And
Yeah.
then I when I got COVID, I was obviously like concerned about what would happen. I tried really hard not to be scared, but in my head, I was kind of like, well, whatever happens, happens, and I'll deal with it. Um, and while I was sick, I had some kind of glaring symptoms. Like I felt like I had expected it not to be as bad, but when it passed, I am not kidding. I almost immediately went back to baseline. I had maybe like a week or two where I felt a little fatigued, foggy, maybe a little irritable. And then it was almost like all of a sudden I just went right back to where I was and felt like I hadn't even been sick. It
Wow.
was amazing.
So really fast bounce back time. So prior to getting COVID, I mean, you were in a place where you're pretty functional. You weren't even thinking about adjustment periods. You were going out, walking,
No.
all that. So COVID hits you and then you bounce back. It's pretty remarkable to see actually, even people, a few steps behind you in recovery, like they're dealing with adjustment periods going along and then they get COVID, but it doesn't set them back as far as they think. Actually doesn't really set them back at all. It's kind of like just
I've
like any
seen
other
that
adjustment
too
period.
with people. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty amazing. That might be like maybe a misconception that there is out there is that you can't build resiliency towards those things.
Exactly. So yeah, your body bounced back pretty quickly. So, leading up to you getting COVID, just so people get an idea of a mindset after you become functional again, was there fear that you could relapse or go back to square one or things like that? Is that something you would think about throughout the day, or you almost like switch into a
Um,
different kind of thinking?
Honestly, no. Um, it's hard to describe. I mean, I guess that fear and that thoughts just left my mind for the most part. The only thing I've gotten is like, well, if that happened, what would I do? But then I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. So, and logically, I know that if that were to happen, I would deal with it when it came up and everything would, work itself out and I shouldn't worry about it. But I don't think about that a lot. Leading up to having COVID, it didn't really occupy my mind. I think once I started being able to really take care of myself more, and build momentum with recovery and start feeling like a regular person, and seeing some of the things that happen when you do like the brain retraining and when you swat thoughts and things like that. I just have faith that if something were to come up, I'd be able to handle it, far before it would lead to where I used to be.
Yeah, and that's the way I thought about it too. It's like, what's the likelihood of me relapsing and being bedridden again? I was like, okay, maybe 1%, something like that. And if it did happen, what would I do? Well, I already know what to do. So now it's not
Right.
scary anymore. So it's not intimidating because even if I were to
Yeah.
get sick, I know exactly the answer and the solution, you know? So in terms of what you learn throughout the recovery, and going from walking with a cane, being very dependent on people, to becoming independent, getting rid of the cane and being more functional, what are some of the things you learned that you were able to apply to other areas of your life, right? Like in terms of resiliency or ability to deal with stress, how did
Mhm.
that spill into other areas of life?
I think the idea of it's not even stress management, but just like, looking at what I can and can't control. And I really realized, through the program, how many things I focused on that I could not control. And while I was focusing on those things, I was missing opportunities to do what I can control, So I think for me, what I've learned a lot is being really realistic and objective with myself, and just asking myself, is this stress that's coming up something I can do something about? And if I can, how do I do that? And all else needs to just go out of my mind,
Hmm.
because I can't do anything about it. So I think that the stress management aspect has really helped me the most, and it's helped widespread through my life, even with like relationships and people, and looking at work, and even like self-image, and anxiety I get looking into the future, trying to plan things. I'm just like, but what can I really control, and what can I control, and how do I act accordingly, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And that kind of ties into another thing we really try to drill into you guys of staying in your 3 foot world, and
Mhm.
keeping it simple because you can really only control typically what's around you, or, you can't go back in time. You can't time travel to the future. So it's really focusing on what's in front of you. What can you control? What's in your 3 foot world? That
Yeah.
helps me all the time. And that's a huge concept. Is there anything else like so it's learning what you can control and what you can control. Um, what else in terms of like gratitude or being able to be more present? Has
Mhm.
that changed in the last year or two with all this new capacity and recovering from this kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I think in terms of being present, like how I used to be, my mind was always on what's going to happen or what's not going to happen. And it was never on like, what am I doing? Like, how am I living? What am I doing? What's going on right in front of me that I can be a part of? And I feel like I've really gotten to where, again, I try not to focus on things I can't control, like the future or the past. And I really try to soak in what's going on in the moment, because I had so many years of my life where I couldn't do that, or the present moment wasn't somewhere I wanted to be. So even with life stressors and things that are going on that are, can sometimes be unpleasant, just like everybody experiences, it's nice to want to be present. And it's nice to want to be able to go through those things and handle those things, and not feel like, either I can't mentally handle it or my body's going to crumble if I make one wrong move. So
Mm,
I think the gaining some of that resiliency has helped me be able to be present, because I have more faith in my body and my ability to handle whatever comes up in the present moment.
Yeah, that's so true. Like seeing yourself as not this fragile thing anymore. It's more like anti-fragile and trusting. I think trusting is like the biggest thing. You
Yeah.
and your body are on the same team now, whereas before you feel like you're just in a battle with your
Yeah.
body every day and it's not cooperating. But now, you know, you made it to this point where you've kind of had them working in harmony on the nervous system side of things. So it's just really interesting. And if we were to put Ariel in, let's say, 2022 and then Ariel today side by side, what do you think the biggest differences would be? You know, either physical capacity or even mentally, or, you know, because they're like two different Ariels, right? But what would you say the biggest differences are?
I'd say I have hope today. I can honestly tell you that's not something I was familiar with before I gained momentum in recovery. Um, it's really refreshing, but it's a newer thing for me to be like, wow, I really look forward to seeing how things unfold in my life. Or I wonder in 5 years where I'll be career wise, or will I be in school? Will I be in the state that I'm in? Will I be, that's not something I've ever allowed myself to do because I was horrified of the future. And I think my mindset and how I look forward um, is a lot different than it used to be. And it allows me to like relax and be able to handle things better. I think that, I mean, obviously the capacity is way different. I can do so many more things than I used to be able to, but I wouldn't be able to appreciate that if my mindset hadn't changed completely.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Life just, it's almost like you look at life through a different lens. It's a different
Mhm.
experience, you know, like the CFS mind versus, you know, just a regular functioning mind. Um, and that's arguable too, because what is regular? Every mind is
Right.
unique, I think. But it's like that survival mindset versus that
Mhm.
thrival mindset. And because you had CFS for so long, it's like it was hard to have hope, right? Because it seemed
Yeah.
like every few years, it's like things weren't getting better or they were just getting worse. It was like a downward
Mhm.
trajectory. Whereas now you can kind of feel things are on the upward ascent. So there is a curiosity about the future, which is exciting, right? So in terms of where you're at now and what's coming up, you know, in 2024, what do you have on your radar? What are you excited for? What are some things you're looking to overcome, and how are you dealing with them? I know you're dealing with a an unrelated health issue, right? Um, but how's going through this experience helped you deal with that? Because that's something that's kind of out of your control
Mhm.
too, right? How does this help?
Yeah, it's definitely helped a lot with dealing with anything that's come up, but like some of the medical stuff, I used to have a horrible fear of doctors. And I mean, partially due to not having like the issues related to CFS that get in the way of that, but partially with the mindset change of being able to be like, okay, how do I properly handle this in the first place instead of just like fearing treating it or something?
Mhm.
Um, so then moving on past that, the recovery mindset has really helped me with navigating what I can and can't control in this and accepting that, there are some restrictions currently that I have that are unrelated to CFS, and I can't do anything about that aside from follow those and do what I can to upkeep my physical movement and make sure that my mindset's in the right place and that I am, not shrinking away from things. Like I'm still, I'm doing everything that I can to be active and be healthy,
Mhm.
and that's definitely something that is a recovery mindset because in the past, I'm sure I would have just been like, oh, add this to the list of crap I don't want to deal with, and I don't feel that way. I feel like it's an opportunity um, to build strength essentially.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, you know, you have this thing coming up with the medical stuff, but anything else you're looking forward to this year? Anything you have planned, or any new hobbies you picked up that's exciting about the future? Anything you're doing?
I have some, I've, years ago, I used to do a lot of volunteer work and like mentorship. And that's something that recently I've been able to get back into to an extent, and it's been amazing to be able to help people and volunteer and just try to give people hope and help them on their way. It's something that I really really missed for the last couple of years that I was really sick. So that's been amazing. I've been kind of hopping between like 8 books on Audible because I'm excited
That's
I
I
can
do.
read again.
That's exactly what I do.
So I'm honestly like kind of for the first time in my life exploring what I want to do in the future, you know? And at first I felt kind of silly. I'm like, okay, so I'm like 31 and I have no idea what's going on. But then I was like, oh, I'm like 31 and I have gotten through something that is, incredibly difficult to get to a solution for and then get through. So really, it's
Mhm.
another opportunity where I get to pick how I want things now. So I'm just looking into, I'm reading a lot of books. I'm looking into school programs. I've been applying for different jobs, looking into different jobs. I've been, looking in the area I'm at, like where I'd want to live, and it's really exciting, to feel like I don't know. It's almost like I get a redo in a way of things that I never got because I was so ill. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
my focus is on is really figuring out what I want, and there's other, I have a mental health condition, again, separate from CFS that, you know, recovery has granted me the ability to finally be able to properly treat and work with the right people. And that's been a huge blessing. And that's another focus of mine right now. So I'm just kind of trying to soak up the opportunities that I've been given to be my actual self, which has been great.
Yeah, that's exciting. It's like you're shedding the skin of the whole CFS identity because you had that for so
Yeah.
long, right? Almost half your life. And now it's getting kind of like a fresh start, which is exciting.
Hmm.
It's a bit scary too, but
A little bit.
I'd say
Yeah.
more so. Yeah, it's scary because it's the unknown, but it's kind of like you're entering this new phase of life where you really get to rebuild your life to be just on recovery. You're able to really build your life up versus just kind of stay afloat as you
Right.
had done all those years, just trying to survive through this thing, right? So it's super exciting. And I'm so excited to see what's in store for your future and being able to help other people. I know you talked about the mentorship and giving back and helping others. That's one of the best feelings you can have because best feelings you can experience, especially coming out of CFS. Because I think for so many years we rely on other people, we depend on them and they help us. And we almost feel it's it's almost like we owe it to the world to contribute because there's so many
Right.
people trying to help us, or maybe not so many people,
Hmm.
maybe a few people, but so much was given to us that we want to give it back. And it's one of the best, most fulfilling feelings ever.
Yeah, definitely.
So, in terms of giving hope and helping other people, for people watching this right now who were in your shoes or who are in your shoes, where you were a couple years ago or 5 years ago when you were in the trenches looking for solutions, didn't know if you would ever come out of this, what are some words of encouragement you could tell them to inspire them? And also for people who have come out of the trenches and they're just starting to really start walking around again and be more functional
Mhm.
because you're a few steps ahead of them. What can you tell them?
Um, I guess I would say trust the process, you know, trust that the work that you're doing is going to lend results. And if you have issues trusting the process or keeping that hope, look at the people who've been through it and look at the people who have recovered and the people who are coaching you and trying to help you in their lives. That's something that has been really helpful with me is just, if I had moments of doubt or if I really stressed, just being like, I need to trust the process because so far it's worked, and in the moments where my mind's a little cuckoo and like I feel like maybe it hasn't worked, I look at people I can relate to and I'm like, it's worked for them, I've never had a moment like that and not ended up being like, oh yeah, I believe that. I think a lot of it for me has really been trusting that the decision I made to be in recovery and follow this specific process is a good decision that I made, and I'm going to commit to it. And even if I have moments of doubt, I'm just going to do it. You know,
Mhm.
um, I think that, and then I think maybe the idea that like sometimes I have in mind how I want things to be, and I get very attached to that outcome. And I needed to get to a point where I could let go of the attachment to that outcome and be open to other outcomes and have less of a rigid mindset and more of a flexible mindset to when, like if somebody who, say, has recovered says, hey, you may not be looking at that the right way. Have you considered this? I can say, let me consider that, instead of, oh, no, I know how I want this. that's something that's been a huge asset for me, is being able to look at things with an open mind and just try to be more mentally flexible and have the ability to change paths if I need to, or look at something differently, or take in information and change how I view things. I've had to do that a few times.
And that flexibility is so, so important. I think a lot of people who end up getting CFS or developing it, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they're very type A personalities. So very rigid thinking, very go, 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 got to get this done in this specific way.
Yeah.
Lots of control as well, and extremely high expectations, which, all of those things, they're okay to have in certain doses. But when that's on 24/7, then that's where you'll start to run into these
Yeah.
nervous system issues, right? And
Well, it's
you'll hit your
stressful.
stress.
It's
Yeah,
very stressful on your body to like think
the
how you
pressure.
want everything and just go for it all the time.
Yeah. So to be able to let go and take a step back and kind of just be more flexible in everything, that has been the biggest game changer for me, because before I
Mhm.
was like, we do this, 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 this in this order, in this specific way. And if it doesn't get done in that way, I'm stressing out. And
Yeah.
it's not like anybody had these expectations of me. It's almost the expectations I had of myself.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
now I'm just way more flexible with it. And like you said, more open-minded. And it makes a world's difference. Takes the pressure off, really. Gives you room to breathe and just mentally. It's almost like to mentally breathe, for people who overthink that, it's that moment of clarity. It doesn't feel like you're drowning in your own thoughts and the
Yeah.
pressure. So yeah, I mean, this has been a great chat. Is there anything else you want to say to people? You articulated your words very
Mhm.
well. And, for everybody watching this, after you become functional, you could be bedridden, you could be couch bound. When you start building your body up, you are building that resilience up, not just physically, but mentally and
Mhm.
emotionally. So you're actually able to handle, I think, more things once you recover, because you're able to look at the world differently. Like we just talked about, you're more open minded, you're able to be flexible with your thinking, you're not as rigid in your approach,
Mhm.
and you learn to let go of a lot of things, which allows you to become more anti-fragile. So just because you get COVID, just because something happens in your life, you could have some unrelated medical condition. That's not going to put you back to square one unless you let
No.
it. Right.
Yeah.
But if you follow the same things that got you from bedridden and couchbound and housebound and using a cane to walking, if you follow the same principles that helped you with that and apply it to life, you're going to
Yeah.
be good. You're going to be resilient, you know? So anything else you want to share with these folks, Ariel?
I guess the only thing I can think of is that it just gets better. I don't know. That sounds kind of simple, but I think that like anytime I've been like I've had moments where I've been like, okay, if my life were like this, even though I still don't feel the best, I'd be satisfied. It gets better, and then I'm like, okay, I could handle this, and then things get better. And I don't mean like wild, awesome things happen. It's just like I feel more normal, or more of just like, I can handle things. So I think that it's important to look back on the accomplishments regularly that you've made,
Mm-hmm.
for when you do have weak moments, but not even when you have weak moments, just to build momentum. It's important. I know that a lot of people do the video journaling. I wish kind of I did, but I haven't up till this point, so I haven't. But I do journal, and I journal every so often about like where I'm at and like what my accomplishments have been, and maybe some of the negatives, and just trying to be realistic. And once in a while I try and go through those things, and I try and remind myself where I was, where I'm at, and then remind myself that there's more to come. So I think for me it's really important to keep cultivating hope and vision for the future.
Absolutely. The best is yet to come. And, I'm usually on these interviews, well, in our first ones, and when people are applying for the program or within the program, we always tell people, hey, let's get you to thriving health. Let's get you to thriving health. And you're close. You have a functional life. And once you're past these medical issues, it's just thriving health and you'll be good to go. So, Ariel, it's been a pleasure chatting. Really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of your life, shortly after becoming functional, getting off the couch and getting rid of the cane and being able to move around again and really reintegrate back into the world,
Mhm.
which is super cool. And I think this is a beacon of hope for everybody watching and wondering what happened to that person. Are they still okay? Is that person in remission? And did that person, are they good? So
Mhm.
this is just proof that you can
Yeah.
absolutely build a life after recovery. And it feels like a different life. So
Yeah.
absolutely possible. So if you guys did need extra help, if you wanted some hand holding or you needed some guidance on how to move forward in your recovery, you can click the link down below. We can help you get there. We can help you get to thriving health. We obviously want to see if you're a good fit for the program, right? And make sure that we can actually help you. So there's a questionnaire. Just click the link down below. But always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living life with thriving health. So Ariel, thank you so much. And can't wait to do the next one in the near future.
Thank you.
Take it easy.